money to get gas for the car to drive, so I carpooled with other people. And I made dolls out of corn husks. And I would go to the flea market and I would sell those for cash. And that way I had money for gas so I could go to school. So that's how I got through.
During this time, today's story is about Dorothy, a woman in her 70s, whose life was filled with struggle, but somehow she never gave up. Maybe her story will give you the strength. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I can tell you a story from earlier in my life, and the story is about forgiveness and the benefits for people that forgive, the things that happen. When I was 17, I had my first baby, and she was born 7 weeks early, but she was fine. She was only 4.5 pounds. But then when I was pregnant the second time, I was over 2.5 weeks overdue, and my baby was breech. And so when I went into the hospital, he started my labor, and he expected that I would deliver her. But the problem was that she was so big for me. She was 8.5 pounds. But anyway, I went through the labor, and the labor was really hard because the pains were longer than the time in between. And it took about 8.5 hours.
Wow. Is that like a normal time you should?
Well, I think I had Angie, she was 4.5 pounds, and I think I had her in about 4 or 5 hours. But because she was breech, the labor was harder and it took longer. And in the middle of the labor, and my husband was there with me, and I asked the doctor, I could hardly talk, and I said, C-section, C-section. Patted my hand, and he said, we don't like to do that unless we have to. So, and my husband didn't say anything. I don't know, maybe he did, but maybe I was so in pain that I didn't know. So when it came time to deliver her, the delivery went really bad. And she was so damaged that they had to fly her with a helicopter to the local county hospital in Milwaukee County Hospital. It took them over an hour and a half just to stitch me up after that procedure. It was very traumatic. So I was in the hospital for a few days and I didn't even get to see her. But after I was finally able to get out of the hospital, we drove to Milwaukee, and she was in an isolate unit. And she looked wonderful, but she had a hard time breathing, and she was so damaged that she couldn't eat that way, so they had to feed her with a tube. So it broke my heart, but I prayed so much, that God would heal her, that could save her. And at 19 years old, probably a few weeks into going every other day, I would go visit her for a few hours, and then I would come visit, and I'd come home. After a few weeks into that, the hospital had a panel of doctors set up. They set up a table, and they had, a social worker, doctors, whatever, and they explained to me that I wouldn't be able to bring her home. And they also asked me that if anything happened, did I want to revive her? So at 19 years old, I had to make a decision that if she died, that they would not revive her. And my husband did not make that decision. He left that to me, so I did that. Well, after about 7.5 weeks, she was out of the intensive care, but she was still in the hospital. But I could tell that she was so damaged that her mental capacity was just not there at all. And so one day I went to visit her, and I spent 8.5 hours. I held her. And when I got home, we didn't have cell phones at the time. When I got home, the phone was ringing, and they told me that she had passed away. Of course, we had an actual funeral for her, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life. But the doctor that had basically delivered her was also my family doctor, and I had known him most of my life. And so as time went on, I realized that I had a choice. I could either forgive him or I could sue him. because of neglect or negligence or whatever.
So it's the doctor's fault.
I think it was the doctor's fault. It was a bad decision because he was a GP, and because as I learned later, in order to do a C-section, I think they might have needed an obstetrician. I'm not sure. This was 1976, so I don't know. Well, we had good. When the bill came in 1976, it was $32,000, and insurance paid the whole bill. So I thought about it, and I thought if I am angry or if I sue and go through that process, then emotionally I'm going to be all involved in that.
Yeah.
But I was convinced that the doctor didn't do it for the wrong reason, and that I was convinced that he would never make that mistake again. I was convinced of it. So I opted in my mind to forgive him so I could move on with my life and with my little girl. So then in 1978, I was pregnant again. And this time, my baby was breech again. So I went to a gynecologist, obstetrician this time. And they planned for the surgery, the C-section, so I could have him. And so what I did is I asked the obstetrician if he would ask that first doctor to come and assist in the surgery. It was my way of saying, I forgive you. So he did. He came and he assisted. And everything went okay. I mean, it was good. And I learned later, though, this is the best part about it. I learned if I had sued him for negligence, it would have affected his life and his career. But because I didn't do that, he went on to work with Doctors Without Borders into his retirement, and he helped thousands of people, or at least hundreds of people.
So what's her name?
Her name was Amelia Jane, and and she was very sweet girl. She was beautiful, just beautiful. So I have an angel now. I have an angel in heaven. And then the baby that came after that was my son Nick, Joel 4th. So 2 more plus the 1, 3 live births, 3 living children. My life was difficult from the time I was 15 years old till I was about 26 years old, because my father died when I was 15, and it left my brother, who was 13, and my mom and I. And I think that's probably why I was young, because I went for a whole year and didn't talk to anybody because of grief, and no one seemed to notice. But they didn't do grief counseling then. But anyway, then after I was married and had the 3 children, when I think it was about 9, probably Angie was 14, so about probably 7 years after Amy, then my aunt had a little girl that she was caring for, and she had been in the foster care system, and my aunt had a stroke. And my uncle was caring for his wife, my aunt, and my daughter Tina. So I told my uncle that she could come and live with our family until my aunt got better. And so she came to live with us when she was 9 years old. And then 3 months after she came to live with us, then my aunt passed away. So then she lived with me for another 2 years. And then after that time, my uncle found her birth mother and got a lawyer, and so I adopted her. So about 11 months after I adopted her, my husband left. And he decided he didn't love me anymore, so he took off, and he left me with all 4 of the children. I had no income because he did not want me to work, so I never worked. I didn't have a degree at that time. I had no way to make money for my family unless I probably went and got a minimum wage job, and that wouldn't have paid for all that I needed. So I was forced to sign up for what they called AFDC, or welfare at that time. My mom was a widow, so
why didn't you consider to live with?
My mom was 40 when I was born, and at this point she's like 66, and she couldn't manage to have that many children, and she didn't have a big enough house for it. She had a small house. And I wouldn't do that to my mother unless I, really didn't have another way. So I had to sign up for welfare, and people think that welfare is like, people abuse the system, but it is not easy to be on welfare because it's a system that it helps with food and it helps with the money, but as soon as you make any extra money, they take it away. So it keeps you poor, right? So what I did was I decided I had to go to school to get my degree after he left.
But where do you get the money for a degree?
Well, because I could have gotten money for a degree when I graduated high school because my father had died. So I would have gone on government grants at that time. But emotionally, I was just not ready, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. But because I'm an artist, when my husband left, I thought I need to make money and I need to have a job that will, really support my family. So I decided to become an interior designer. So where I got the money was I got government grants because my income was low. And instead of going to university, I went to a technical school. So
the tuition fee is much lower.
And I would only get a diploma degree, which is a 2-year degree.
Okay.
But I realized that with interior design, I worked side by side with people who had a 4-year, a bachelor's degree. They really didn't know more than I did. The technical school was very good at teaching me what I needed to know. So I stretched 4 semesters into 5 semesters because 12 credits was considered full-time, and so it worked out 12 credits each semester because it was like 66 credits or something like that. So I stretched it into 5 semesters while I cared for my children. And it was like 35-mile drive to go to school on top of it. And that was like 5 days a week.
Then when you were not at home, who took care of the kid?
Well, my children were in school, all except for Joel. At that point when I was in school, Joel was he was probably 4 years old. And my next door neighbor, I don't know if I should tell you this, I got food stamps, right? Well, my next door neighbor, she also got food stamps, but I paid her to watch Joel during the day when I went with food stamps and took the food stamps away from my family to give to her because it's the only way I could pay her because I don't have enough money, right?
So how much worth of the food stamp at that time?
Probably about half of what I got.
Then, wow.
But it was worth it. When I graduated, I got a 4.0. I was so motivated to take care of my family that I put my whole heart and soul into it. And at one point, I didn't even have enough money to get gas for the car to drive, so I carpooled with other people. And I made dolls out of corn husks. And I would go to the flea market and I would sell those for cash. And that way I had money for gas so I could go to school. So that's how I got through.
During this time, have you ever think about suicide?
No, but I did get really stressed when I was in the very last class at school. It was called Applied. And you have to use all the knowledge of all the classes. And they give you, in interior design, they would give you a project to do. And you'd have to draw plans and specify everything just like you would in a real job. And what they used was a project for a qualification for American Society of Interior Designers. So it was actually a project that would be a test if you wanted to join that society. And in the middle of that, I broke down and I cried. And I told my boyfriend at the time, that's it, I'm done. I'm just going to go sell cameras at Kmart. He said, no, you'll be all right. You're going to do. So then I graduated. I got the 4.0 and I had to take the first job that came along. I didn't even have time to look for a job I really wanted because the welfare, the money, you're only supposed to get it for 2 years. And I was about 6 months over the 2 years. And they told me that I had to go, every day I had to drive 30 miles to take a class on how to do a resume. And I told them that I learned how to do the resume in college, but it didn't matter. They made me drive 30 miles every day to learn how to do a resume. I told them I could teach the class. It didn't matter. So I heard that there was a job in a city, it's in Racine, Wisconsin, at a high-end furniture store. And I went with my portfolio with all the pictures of my projects and everything, and I went there and they hired me on the spot. And it was 100% commission job. So I started out my career as 100% commission with 4 kids and a mortgage.
give you the most of the support during that time?
My mom was a good support. She helped out with some things, like watching the kids occasionally for me and things. And she always...
How old was she?
If I was 29, she had to be 71. 71, yeah. So, but my present husband, I was my boyfriend at the time, he was a big support for me, and I was a support for him too. So somehow we managed. We managed to do it, and it really well, because I became a top seller at that store. With a commission job, if you don't sell, you don't make any money. You can go all day and not make any money. But I was a top seller there, and I stayed there for 16 years until I started my own business. So it worked out well. I have my interior design business, which I tried to retire in 20. Now I work a little in retirement, but it's a whole lot more fun because I don't have to. And I like the people, so that's why I do it.
So what would you say to other people if they were struggling in their life?
Well, first of all, don't ever give up, because you never know what tomorrow brings. Sometimes in your mind you think that everything is bad, but what if tomorrow something wonderful happens? You should always keep on, because you just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Hello, welcome to my channel. I am JJ. This is a space where we listen to a real human life story. If you want to share your story, feel free to reach out to me. You might inspire other people who are also going through the same situation as you. Remember to subscribe me. Thanks.